we've done to show how the EMF from this project will affect both health impacts on local citizens and also potential impacts on other systems that are subject to EMF interference.
Are you talking about like impacts on local wildlife and
Wildlife,
cattle,
humans. I mean, there's the study in '82, I'm sure you've seen it, that suggested a link between childhood leukemia and the proximity to high voltage transmission lines. I don't know of another study that has been done to either show that was an incorrect study or a correct study. I don't think there's any evidence that has proven the linkage. So human EMF impact as well as wildlife impact as well as environmental impact. For instance, what happens to our 911 systems that are already sort of sketchy when we've got all this EMF that's being generated?
Yeah, so I'll start with there and work back.
Sure.
Generally, the power lines have little to no impact on like radio, TV, cell phone type. The frequencies that they operate on versus what a lot of the wireless communication stuff operates on are very different, and they generally don't interact with each other. So this project, this line should have no adverse impact on that. As far as the other one, coming back to the human health, you're right. There was that study in the 80s that showed a small correlation in a very small increase in childhood leukemia as part of that study. There's been a whole bunch of follow-up subsequent studies to that, as well as additional studies that have gone back and looked at that same data set. The consensus from everybody else looking either elsewhere to try and answer that question or looking at that data is they weren't able to find anything that showed anything other than the two happened at the same time, but there was nothing that came back and they were able to say conclusively, oh yes, this was because of the power lines, but they also, or oh yes, this was some other factor that came into play. There are hundreds of scientific studies worldwide that are looking at this from all different impacts, both from similar population studies like that one, but there's also ones that are looking at specific tissue studies in laboratory to try and see at what point, what field strengths, both short-term acute exposure, so really like high-level, very intensive, as well as some of that like long-term, and especially that long-term, if there was some mechanism that it was causing negative health impacts for people, that would be where that would show up. And to date, that's just not really, that science isn't materializing even after decades of study. There's a list on the Valley Link website of a bunch of published studies. There's also in a lot of the applications to the state regulators, there's whole sections that contain additional studies on both the large population and small lab settings, and what those studies, more recent studies, are doing to inform public health and around EMF.
The other part of the question was wildlife.
Those aren't quite as common that I'm aware of. I know the French Agriculture Agency published a study, I believe either in 2024 or 2025, that was looking kind of holistically on the outcomes for their livestock animals. And that study, the results of that study basically showed that there's no discernible impact in health outcomes expectancies between populations living near power lines and populations living without.
I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.